Jordan Moore, Keely Eure, and Max Browne with you on the Football Roundtable. Missing the big fella Sean Cody again, but he promises to be there in Vegas. I don't think Sean's ever missed a Vegas trip, so he will for sure get healthy for that one. What were you guys' biggest takeaways from what turned out to be a pretty complete game, again, a pretty comfortable win over Notre Dame? It wasn't easy, but considering the drama of the previous week, USC pretty much controlled it for 60 minutes.
Caleb Williams and Heisman.
He's good.
He is good, yes. And man, the poses he was doing, and he said he was encouraged to do it.
Ralik definitely forced him to do it. Yeah. What was his answer after the game? I didn't see
just low key, like, oh, my buddies were telling me it,
Yeah.
and like downplayed it rather than any sort of like arrogant take.
I feel like Ralik did it like in the first game of the season, so it was just like
fair. That is fair.
And so he was trying to get Caleb to do sort of, in his mind, I think, his celebration, but not realizing the implications are that
he actually
in a week he is very, very likely to be the Heisman Trophy winner, which is pretty wild, guys.
This whole thing is wild.
Yeah.
Like, can we just take a moment? This team
I'm with you.
11-1.
Yep.
And I talked about this post game, but it's still in my mind. I see the opponents fan opponents just gathering at the 50-yard line last season because all the USC fans had left. Nothing was really left to watch for USC fans. And the atmosphere on Saturday against Notre Dame was electric. And my interns are super young, and they were like, is this what USC games are like? And I was like, yes.
Used to be.
Yes, it used to be. But just undefeated at home this season, it's just been a wild, wild ride, and it's not over. And that makes it even crazier.
And the big reason why, in addition to everything, how great Caleb Williams is or Jordan Addison is the trenches. And to go and play Notre Dame and have that rushing performance and the defensive line front seven performance that we had, like, those are the things that's going to take USC to the even next level. And before the season started, that's why I was like, I had no doubts about Caleb or Jordan and any of those guys. My doubts were the guys on the line of scrimmage. And a game like that said, hey, we're playing at a high level, or at least it's not a weakness by any means. And they're playing well.
And I think a testament to that, too, is how banged up the offensive line has been this whole season. We haven't even fully had to talk about it too much because guys like Mason Murphy have stepped up.
We don't even know necessarily. It's like Andrew Voorhees like quietly drifts away like during a game and just sits down, and you're like, oh, there's like an All-American offensive lineman that's not playing, and they were still dominating. Like, it didn't slow them down.
I mean, the fact that Justin Dedich had a hamstring injury through half of the season. Yeah, it's just stuff like that where these guys have obviously been banged up and yet still performing at such a high level. And then the fact that Mason Murphy could be developed to the point where he's playing significant snaps where he didn't last season. It's a testament to this coaching staff and just that room, that offensive line room that's so tight-knit.
Yeah, they played 3 different left tackles, and most people tell you that's the most important position on the line, and they haven't skipped a beat. But I agree with you, Max. I look at the other side of the line, and the story coming in was Notre Dame's going to pound, USC, and even, what John Wilner wrote something like, oh, the Irish are going to run for 500 yards or something. Which,
he said like 850.
Yeah, a tweet that Lincoln Riley
I was going to say, I
noticed.
See you, Lincoln. That's
clearly saw that tweet in his timeline.
He said in the post game.
Oh, did he?
He said, I got sick and tired of hearing about how we were going to get run over tonight, and that didn't happen. So this was the first time I think that like they heard outside noise.
And it's funny because like those that listen to John Wilner, like John's not a like hot take guy.
Not at all.
I cracked up when
John's a friend of the show.
That. Yeah.
Anytime we have any Pac-12 explanations, we turn to John for sure. But even me at halftime, I said something like, "Oh, the defense is held up against the run game," and he immediately sort of snapped and corrected me. He said, "We've dominated," and ultimately they pretty much did. 90 rush yards, and I thought even the previous week they held up pretty well against Charbonnet.
Yeah.
But here we go against Utah, where again they held up really well in the running back run game in Salt Lake City, but Cam Rising beat them, or Cam Rising in the run game was a real problem for them. And here we are again. I feel like they've solved in a lot of ways the running back run game, but the dual threat and having multiple options back there, poses a different problem.
And it's been a problem the past month or so for Utah. Tavion Thomas is already declared for the NFL draft with the turf toe, I believe. And then Jackson, their third-string quarterback, is now a converted running back. So he's still trying to find his way a little bit. Cam Rising's wearing a knee brace on his right knee, I believe. So it's not as seamless as it may have been for Utah last time we were in Salt Lake. And last time we were in Salt Lake, it was the first game, I believe, without Brant Keithy as well. So Utah's had their fair share of injuries this season.
And Dalton Kincaid is... Now, Whittingham said he's going to play on Friday, but he apparently hurt his wrist against Colorado on Saturday. So
he did have a big game against Colorado.
That is something to look out for. But what I'm curious about is Bryson Shaw wasn't healthy the first time around USC played Utah. Do you like your odds better when you have Max Williams at nickel and then you have Bryson Shaw next to Kalen? I don't know. I think it's a different look for sure.
The Kincaid thing is funny because you look at his game log, and I actually have the over-under. It's about Dalton Kincaid,
Ooh,
so maybe we should
alert.
wait. But it was an outlier of a performance. Now, it could be a matchup thing. If he does it again, we'll go, oh, this is just maybe a really bad matchup. But it's not like this guy has had 16 catches every week against everybody.
Yeah.
But this is the NFL side of it where Alex Grinch has to address it this week. Like, he has to come up with a different plan. You can't get beat by the same person twice.
And he's their main weapon, so I envision that the offensive game plan from Utah's perspective is going to feature him. I saw their head coach, Kyle Whittingham, was upset that he was not on the Blitnikoff semifinalists, which was unique. I'd never even thought about that from a tight end perspective.
This is like the NFL thing now where the tight ends want to be considered wide receivers kind of thing. They have an award. It's called the Mackey Award.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm just saying
I believe it.
I guess I don't care. He could be a Blitnikoff Award winner, but he doesn't have those kind of numbers.
Pretty sure it was what. Either way, he is their most explosive playmaker. I think that's to me, it's a little bit of he's going to get his, similar to Michael Mayer in terms of, hey, even if he does get his catches, just don't let that be a ripple effect where other guys get his. Okay, 16 catches is a different ball game.
Right.
But if he gets 8 or 9, I'm not totally worried about that.
Yeah, like coming into this game, you're like highlighting, circling Dalton Kincaid. That's an area you need to address. But other than that, I mean, how successful was Utah outside of Dalton Kincaid? I mean, I feel like USC's defense was able to at least be winnable if you take away Dalton Kincaid. I know that's such a ticky-tacky argument. But
yeah, I mean, the real ticky-tacky argument is the one that I'm making, which is it was to me it was a 42-28 game that went 43-42 because there were two monstrous, what I would call phantom roughing the passer penalties. They were marginal at best.
Yeah.
One erased an interception, which then you would have been +2 in turnovers, which has basically been USC's formula this year. Get 2 turnovers. They only got 1 because of that. The other one was a punting situation that extended a drive and led to 2 touchdowns. And you're in a neutral field. There's a lot of positives. The thing that switches this time is USC has all the pressure on it. There is no pressure on Utah in this game. They won this thing last year. They have experience. They kind of backed into this game a little bit, and that Oregon fell apart and lost it. This was supposed to be Oregon versus USC. The Trojans are the one all of a sudden going, oh my God, we're 1 away from the playoff. This is pressure on us. Now, whether they see it that way, I'm sure the coaches don't want them to see it that way, but that's the truth.
Yeah, but I don't think this team has ever really thought that way.
They haven't.
You don't get that vibe. And I would argue that the pressure was on them in Salt Lake as well, because everyone was talking about Rice Eccles. And, I don't know. I don't sense that from this Lincoln Riley team.
I don't either. But I just think things changed in a hurry, and so
Fair.
now I wonder,
That's fair.
I wonder if they'll wake up and see that when the playoff is going to drop tomorrow and they're going to be number 4. This is a lot of fun, guys. Last year at this time, we weren't prepping for a championship game. We were having fun. We were at a Lincoln Riley press conference and excited about the new era. But it's really fun to be involved in this thing, and I can't wait for Friday. The over/under is presented by Pechanga Resort Casino, proud partner of USC Athletics. All right, I promised you over-under about Dalton Kincaid. Over-under 7.5 catches for Kincaid. Here's a little background for you. He had 16 versus USC last time. He has top 7, though, just twice this season.
I'm going under because I think if you're Alex Grinch, the one thing that you have to walk away from this game saying is we didn't let the same thing happen to us twice. So I'm going under. And I also think it's going to be a byproduct of, hey, they're going to put 2 guys over Kincaid. They're going to test Mekhi Blackman or these corners outside and say, force these Utah receivers to beat us. They have not done that. They have not had Utah's not had elite production at the receiver position all season long. So I'm going under because of Alex Grinch.
So this is catches, not just targets?
Yep.
I'm going to take the over. And I don't know. I just feel like they're still going to try and feed everything through Kincaid, especially with how Max mentioned how Cam Rising isn't 100% possibly. I don't know. I just feel like they're going to be like, we have a winning formula. Let's see if you've actually figured out an answer to it.
So USC wins if so we're sitting here next Monday and USC won, and what are we talking about?
Whew. I mean, I think
the turnover margin and Caleb Williams. And I mean, it's been so consistent and so good all season long. But I view Utah very similar to Notre Dame in that I don't know if we need to push around Utah in the run game department and run defense department, but we can't walk away from this game where Utah's having 200 yards rushing or 250 yards rushing. If you can at least make it neutral, USC is going to win this game.
What's interesting is the Utah game kind of was the spark to this offensive explosion. This Caleb Williams
agree.
explosion.
I mean, that's why I look back at the Utah game and I think like they played really well that night.
Really well.
That was the kind of game where USC rolls into Salt Lake and can't handle the crowd and gets steamrolled and commits 10 penalties and turns the ball over. Like I've seen that game a lot over the last decade. It was the opposite of that. They started that game and went touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And then Utah sort of slowly got back in and they used the double possession at halftime and they got a couple whistles and some things went their way and the clock management at the end, like all that needed to go perfectly for Utah because USC was locked in that night.
Yeah, and so if that was the start of what we've seen from Caleb Williams and company, what will we see on Friday? I'm not sure, but probably will be good.
Also interested to see, you mentioned neutral site game. How neutral is neutral?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The must travels well.
Yep.
USC fans, Lincoln's been calling you out this season. You gotta travel well because this it's not going to be good if it becomes another road game as well.
Trojan fans had 2 weeks too to prepare for this. Utah had less.
Good point.
And last I checked, people from LA love going to Vegas. So
hey. Count me in.
It should be a good crowd. All right, we'll be back to talk about it next week. Thanks to everyone involved in the show and getting us on tonight. Ben Conroy. Hey, who's back at the studio? Art Webb back at the studio. And until next week, we will see you. Our show starts at 3 o'clock on Friday. Kick time is at 5. For my co-hosts, I'm Jordan Moore. Fight on, everyone. Have a great week.